Hello everyone, my name is Dmitry Naumov and today I'm going to talk about new features of Acumatica ERP and specifically new features of APIs in Acumatica ERP. As you may know, we are going to release 2019 R2 version this September and beta version is already available on our website. So let's take a look at the new things in this version. So today we are going to talk about functionality changes, contract-based API changes, and OAuth 2.0 for OData. And we are going to talk about future plans also. And by the way, the webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be available for everyone. Okay, and if you have any questions, you have a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to use the button to ask your questions. I'll be happy to answer them after the webinar. Okay, so let's start. First of all, we have a few important functionality changes in Acumatica 2019 R2. So we have deprecated classic UI, and we have also simplified organization and branch structure. So let's compare them. First of all, let's go to any screen that contains company and branch selectors in Acumatica 2018 R2. So as you can see, this is Acumatica 2018 R2. And in this version, we have a company and branch selectors on that kind of screens. So here you can select companies. Here you can select branches from that company. So basically, that selector follows the same structure as we have here. So in Acumatica 2019 R2, we have simplified that selectors, and we have only one selector right now on that screen. So as you can see, we have the entire tree structure here, the same as we have here. For APIs, you can send the value to the same branch field that was there in the default endpoint, and it will work the same way as it did before. And you can also send the company value to that selector. So basically for APIs, it stays like that unless you mapped the branch or company field separately in your custom endpoint. If you did that, you will probably need to remap that to use only one field. Okay, and another thing is deprecation of classic UI. As you know, in Acumatica 2017 R2, we have introduced a new UI, so the new menu structure. So, but we still supported classic menu structure until this moment. So starting from Acumatica 2019 R2, we have stopped supporting classic UI structure. So how it affects the APIs? Basically, it does not affect APIs, but it does affect the way you configure this API. So for instance, if you have your custom web service endpoint and you want to add some screen to that endpoint, in Acumatica 2018 R2, you can do it like that. So you press insert here, you name your object, and you go through the tree structure, tree menu structure. That is basically a classic menu structure of Acumatica ERP. So starting from Acumatica 2018 2019-R2, you can do the same thing. So you click Insert and you get the same pop-up, but in the Screen ID selector, it's now just a grid where you can find your screens. So yeah, I think my session logged out, but still, so you have a selector. Yeah, it's still working. So you have a search box here, so you can easily search for your screen, so you don't need to really know the menu structure to find your screen. Okay, so let's switch back to my slides. And I think that's all the important changes that may affect APIs of Acumatica ERP from the functional point of view. So for sure there are other changes, and you can find the full list on the portal.acumatica.com in the release notes. But these are two most important ones that you should know about to map your endpoint in the new versions properly. As for contract-based API changes in Acumatica 2019 R2, first of all, we do not have any new endpoint in this version. So as you know, we have default endpoints of different versions here. Okay, so as you see, we have 3 endpoints right now, and it will still be like that in Acumatica 2019 R2. So we are not going to make any changes to this thing. Besides, we have a new login parameter named tenant. Basically, it's the same login parameter as it was previously in Acumatica 2018 R2 and 2019 R1. So in these previous versions, it was named company. So let's see. Here I have my login requests for Acumatica 2018 R2 and for Acumatica 2019 R2. So as you can see, in Acumatica 2019 R2, we had that request parameter company, named company. So in Acumatica 2019 R2, we have a parameter named tenant. So basically it's the same thing, and you can still use the company parameter, but you cannot use both. So once you try to use both parameters in the same login request, you will have an error as a response from the server. So basically we renamed that to be in line with the box name on the login screen. So right now this is a main parameter. So company is in backward compatibility mode, and someday we will remove company login parameter. Besides, right now in Acumatica 2019 R2, we have a new API method that you can use to get Acumatica ERP version and Acumatica ERP endpoints. So let me demonstrate that. Here I have a request. So basically it's a request with the website address and entity in the end. So, and it's a GET type request. So let's send that request. As you can see, as a response, we have a version of Acumatica ERP here, and we have a list of endpoints available on that instance. As you may notice, not all that endpoints. So as you can see, I have 4 here, but here I do not have B2OB endpoint. And why is that? That is because if you are not logged into Acumatica ERP instance, it will only show you the default ones, so the ones that are default for that version of Acumatica ERP. However, if you log into the system, so let me do that. Okay, and let's try again. So as you can see, right now I have another endpoint here. And also a version of Acumatica ERP DLLs and Acumatica ERP database. So very useful method to get a list of endpoints and version. So if you are going to develop independent version of your software that you want to integrate with all the versions of Acumatica ERP, you can always check this and you will know which version of Acumatica ERP is installed. Another important thing, and I think it's the most exciting thing of this release, is that we have introduced optimized export of 2 detail branches for Acumatica ERP 2019 R2. So let's take a look. First of all, let's log out from our 2019 R2 instance, and let's log into 2018 R2 instance. Okay, done. Well, so let's try to get top 5 sales orders from our Acumatica ERP 2018 R2 instance. So let's send that request. As you can see, it's a default endpoint version 18.2, and we are going to get a sales order entity and only top 5 sales orders from the system. It may take some time, but here are they. So our sales orders in the JSON format. In case if we have some requirements to see details of these sales orders, we can add expand equal details parameter to this request, and we will get our sales orders with their details, so with their lines. And as you can see, here are lines of these sales orders. Okay, so let's imagine we need tax details right now. So we need to know which taxes are applied to the sales order. So let's change our expand parameter to be a tax details expand parameter. And as you can see, right now we have tax details here. It's empty for that sales order, but anyways, we know that we do not have any taxes for this sales order. Great. So what if we need both of them? Let's try. So as you can see, I can do it like that. So expand and list 2 entities here. Let's send it. And we can get an error. So they're saying more than one detail property have been used in the request, and I cannot work with that. So in previous versions, if you want to know tax details and details of sales order, you have to request sales orders one by one, and you have to or you have to request details of sales orders first, and then request tax details of sales orders. However, in Acumatica 2019 R2, we have fixed that. So let's log into our new 2019 R2 instance, and let's get sales orders with both details and tax details in Acumatica 2019 R2. As you can see, here I have both parameters. So let's request that. It may take some time. And it's not because the request takes more time, it's because my machine is not so good here. So, as you can see, we have a details and we have tax details. So, in the same request, we requested both details and tax details, and we get them back. Woohoo! Okay, I hope you like it. So, and another important thing about contract-based API changes in Acumatica ERP 2019 R2 is that now we have persistent node IDs for top-level entities. So, as you know, in previous versions, so let's take a look at the result. So, as you know, in previous versions, this ID that you get back from the system when you request something, it may change if you relog into the system. So for every session, it is regenerated, and you can never use it across the sessions to identify the record, because it changes every time. It's pretty annoying, right? So in Acumatica 2019 R2, this ID is persistent, and it will not be changed between sessions. It will be the same. So if I log out, and let's remember this. So it starts with 211 and ends with C2, right? So we have logged out from, not sure from that. And let's log back in. Okay. So 211 ends with C2. Let's resend our request. Here it is, the same ID. So currently you can rely on that ID and you can use it as an identifier of the record. Basically, this ID is a node ID that you see in the database field of the record. So basically, if you select from the sales order table and filter by node ID using this value, you will get the same sales order from the SQL server. So a couple of important notes here. First of all, it works only with these entities that have node ID field. So entities that doesn't have node ID field will still have auto-generated ID, and it will still not be persistent. Another thing is that right now it's only available for top-level entities. So it will not be persistent for child-level entities. So for details and linked entities, it is still not persistent. Okay, so that are all changes to contract-based API in Acumatica 2019 R2. There are a couple of other changes, for instance, OAuth 2.0 support for OData. We will not be talking about that a lot. You can always go to the release notes on our portal and read about all the changes that we have. And let's talk about our future plans. Let's talk about things that we are going to do in Acumatica ERP 2020 R1 and Acumatica ERP 2020 R2. So first of all, in Acumatica 2020 R1, we are going to release a new OData version 4 support. So, and you can go to your web browser and search for it. OData version 4. So here it is, odata.org and OData version 4 specification. So we are going to support that. Basically, the idea behind that is that you can compose your query in the URL of the request. So with that OData version 4, you don't really need a generic inquiry behind that. You can just request data straight from Acumatica with the SQL-like request. So you don't really need any customization packages with GIs anymore. You can just send this request in the URL. And basically, in the background, it kind of creates a generic inquiry, and it gets all the data and sends the data back. And of course, it caches everything, so the next time it will not compose the same query again. It will just reselect it and send you the new data. So basically, a better way of integrating via OData. Another important thing that we are going to have in Acumatica 2020 Art1 is the push notifications and business process events improvements. So we are going to have login improvements there. So we are going to build new screens where you can explore different events happening within push notifications and business process events mechanism. And we are going to have new or improved configuration or setup for these two things. By the way, we're going to have some webhooks inside Acumatica, so Acumatica will be able to receive push notifications and receive webhooks. And in Acumatica 2020 R2, we are going to have new endpoint. And with that, 6.1 endpoint will be deprecated. So a couple of important things about new endpoint. So this new endpoint will be supporting only REST API. It will not support SOAP contract-based API. So there are a couple of important changes in that endpoint, and once it's ready, we will let you know about these changes. Right now it's in design stage yet, so cannot say anything specific right now. However, both Acumatica ERP 2017 R2 endpoint and 18 R2 endpoint will still be there, and these two endpoints will still support SOAP APIs, and you will be able to use them for several years. Okay, so I think that's all for today. And let's get to your questions. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I see we have 7 questions Q&A tab. So if you have any questions, just feel free to click that button, Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and ask your question. Okay, so first question. Any specific business use case that we see for the Acumatica ERP versions endpoint? So I think Kumar is asking about that requests, all right? This one, list of versions and endpoints. So basically, this scenario we've implemented it for is like that. So imagine you have a software that connects to Acumatica ERP, and for different versions of Acumatica ERP you have different requirements. So for instance, you have different API requests based on version of Acumatica ERP. So to determine which version of Acumatica ERP is used by the client, you can use that request. So after you request the information about the instance, you know the version of Acumatica ERP, you know the endpoints available, and you can immediately start working with that based on the data received. So you can either turn your backward compatibility mode and work with the older version of Acumatica ERP, or you can use all the new features of the new version and send all the beautiful kinds of requests that you can do with new version. I think that answers the question. If not, please specify it in the questions. Okay, so another question is like that. So the API has been optimized only for 2 details. If I need to get details, discounts, and taxes, I will have to send 2 requests. To be honest, I've not tested it with more than 2. We can do it right now. To be honest, I'm not really sure. So let's try. Details. Discount. Let's check if we have it here. So default endpoint. 18.2. Okay, sales order. Discount details. Okay. Details. Let's try. Yeah, it works. Well, basically, I cannot guarantee it will work with all the detail types because for some detail types there are BQL delegates, and as you know, it's a different kind of error. So like view contains BQL delegate, and this is another error that was not fixed. But for these types of details that do not contain any BQL delegates, it will work, as we see here. Okay. Okay, the next question is the same. Okay, another question is, will the ID change if the record has been changed, or it's bound to the keys of the record? So basically, ID will not change if you do not change node ID of the record. I mean, not really node text. So node text you can change. However, if you have some logic in your code, in the code of your customization that changes node ID itself, it will break the logic. However, if you do not have any kind of this logic in your customizations, it will never change. So node ID is persistent in the system. So Yuri is asking about limitations for getting details and, for example, delegate methods. As I said, delegate methods are still an issue, and these methods are still throwing errors. So we are working on that. We are trying to get rid of these delegate methods, but it is not going to work if you just add these delegate methods on your own. subqueries supported in OData version 4. So another question is, will subqueries be supported in OData version 4? As I know, it will not be supported. So you can go to the OData version 4 specification and read it. However, as I remember, it is not mentioned there, so it is not supported. Another question is, will the OR operator be supported in future versions of Acumatica ERP? So depends on the type of API. For OData, as I said, for OData version 4, I think it is supported and it will be supported in OData requests. So yes. As for contract-based API, we do not have any plans to introduce it for contract-based API. Another question is, any additional options or enhancements planned to make shipment confirmation more easier and reliable so that if it facilitates better integration and support with external shippers, especially with webhooks features being added to the platform? Yes, we are working on shipment confirmation and shipment creation processes, and these changes will be introduced along with the new endpoint in Acumatica ERP 2020 R2. So we do not have any more questions. Let me check chat. Okay, there are nothing in the chat. So great. If you have more questions, you can always ask me directly via email. So here is my email. And if you have any suggestions and requests, feature requests, you can also use my email, or you can use feedback.acumatica.com website. We are looking at that website really closely, so feel free to share your ideas and requests. So that's all. Thank you for your time, and feel free to reach us.